Afternoon, everybody, and thank you for viewing this presentation. While it's aimed at businesses in the base enterprise centre, I hope it might be of interest and of use to a wider group of entrepreneurs. For me, I'm an electronics engineer, although the technology has changed completely since I qualified back in 1970. However, current still flows through wires, even though they're at a nano scale these days, so some things never change. Most of my career was spent in Enterprise Ireland in a variety of different roles, and since I retired in 2014, I've been a mentor with Fingal Local Enterprise Office and a board member of BASE. I've seen the transformation of the Irish industrial scene from a position where there were very few startups, Irish startups in the 1980s, to one where hundreds of startups get underway each year, assisted by an amazing ecosystem of supports, but chiefly by yourselves. So take a bow, you risk takers. I'm going to talk about 6 topics today, and this will just be a short overview of the supports available. But the final slide will be a series of websites and links that will give you further information so you can do your own research about it. So I'm going to be talking about startups, and then I'll talk a bit about the LEO organisation, the Local Enterprise Office organisation, and then some other organisations like Enterprise Ireland. We'll move on then to a bit of R&D. How do you get support for R&D and why should you do it? And we do hope many of your companies do engage in innovation and R&D. We'll do a piece on sales and marketing, mainly stuff I picked up from some various courses and exposure I've had over the years. And we finish up with a piece on Brexit. Will it ever go away? I don't know. So let's start with startups then, right? Now, you'll see various different versions of this in most business planning documents, but they all boil down to these 5 questions. And it doesn't matter whether you're a startup or an established business. If you can address them satisfactorily, you're in business. And not only that, but you'd be more likely to attract financial and other supports if you address those 5 questions properly. Like Dragon's Den is a good example of these questions in action. They always want to know what, who, why, and how. What is your proposition? And is it fully worked out and ready to go? Who is it aimed at? Like, who are you expecting to buy this thing? And why will they buy it? Why will they buy yours over a competitor? How different is yours? What's your USP, your unique selling point? Why will they buy it? How are you going to sell it? Have you worked that one out? Is it going to be face-to-face? Is it going to be through distributors? Is it going to be online, through partnerships? How are you going to sell it? How are you going to get it to them, in other words? And lastly, of course, how are you going to make money? They're the 5 questions, whether you're a startup or an established business. Get those right, and as I say, you're in business. Moving on to the Local Enterprise Office. This is a network right around the country. You probably know this anyway, but I'll just repeat it. Of over 30 offices right around the country, local enterprise offices. We have 4 in the Dublin region, the wider Dublin region. The one I'm attached to is Fingal Local Enterprise Office. But it's your first port of call, and many of you will have benefited from their supports already. So, business advice clinics and mentoring, this is free at present, as are many of the training programs. So this is, as they say, no time like the present to have a look at them. And it's really well worthwhile getting into the Fingal website and explore it and realize what's in there. If you're in the feasibility business, so feasibility will give you a grant of 50% on expenditure up to 30k. So that's up to 15k on expenditure of 30k. To assess the viability and sustainability of a business idea. Whether you're a startup or an established business, that's your starting point. Now, a priming grant, that applies to companies within 18 months of startup. So if you are within 18 months of startup, you're eligible for a priming grant. And that'll give you 50% of the investment or 80,000, whichever is the lesser. Most of those grants tend to come in at between 20 and 40,000, but they can go up to 80k. As you move on a bit, business expansion grants assist companies in their growth phase after 18 months. And that'll give you 50% of the investment or 80k, whichever is the lesser, but they do require 30% repayability, so it's not quite free money. But the terms of repayability they're pretty good. In both cases, priming and business expansion, the emphasis is on job creation and capital equipment, but some other costs are covered like consultancy and travel and stuff like that. If you need money in terms of loans, other than your bank, Microfinance Ireland loans will provide loans of 5 to 25k under pretty preferential terms. In fact, even more preferential if it's a COVID-19 business loan. So well worthwhile exploring, especially if your bank is not coming forward. Microfinance Ireland is a really good route. Connection is through the Leo website. Trading online vouchers. I'm sure a lot of you have already used these. Trading online vouchers will give you currently a grant of 90% on expenditures up to 5k for developing an e-commerce site or indeed adding an e-commerce facility to your existing site. Now note, it doesn't cover the development of a basic brochure site, just the upgrade to e-commerce. So it's to get you trading online, hence the name. And then the TAME, T-A-M-E, is Technical Assistance for Micro Exporters. Where the hell do they get these names from? Will help you to explore export markets via trade show attendance, travel and hotel costs and stuff like that. It includes, interestingly, developing a website for an export market, e.g., say, a German market website, which is not simply a matter of translating your Irish site. The Germans have a different culture, we all know that. Italians similarly have a different culture, so your site needs to look like it's the Italian site or a German site, not just a translated Irish site. Grant support on the TAME grants is 50% up to on expenditures up to 5k. And then lastly, almost lastly, the lean support. This takes groups of companies through a productivity improvement program for manufacturing and services. The benefits of the group of companies is that people learn from each other, and it's led by experts in the lean business. I just mentioned the Fingal Enterprising Women Network. Networks and clusters are really what makes the world go round. And for the females and women among you, this is the way to connect with your fellow entrepreneurs. And finally, the R&D support schemes. I'll cover those later, so we haven't forgotten R&D. Don't forget also other sources of support. Now, Intertrade Ireland, it's a great little organisation based in Uri supporting cross-border trade. Their Elevate scheme provides 5k of funding for specialist sales and marketing support, while Acumen helps you to fund a full or part-time salesperson in Northern Ireland. There's lots of information on their site, including, interestingly, Brexit supports. They also have a Brexit help desk staffed by pretty knowledgeable people. So have a look at their website. Board BIA and BIM are essential allies if you're in the food or fish business. Their sites are very informative. I had to approach BIM there recently on behalf of a client who was importing salmon from Scotland. And I don't know much about the fish business. I think I know a little bit more now, but I was able to find the appropriate salmon contact on the BIM site, the person's name and their phone number. So there's really useful stuff on that. Board BIA have, among their documents, they have an action plan for Brexit, which is extremely well worked out. Our old friends Enterprise Ireland, or maybe it's my old friends, you will be aware of. Quite a large organisation. long background, a lot of services, complex site, but there's huge amounts of information on their site, and very useful indeed. The Knowledge Transfer Ireland might be new to you. It's based within Enterprise Ireland, and it's your source of technology and expertise in the third level sector. It's particularly useful if you're using innovation vouchers. These are €5,000 vouchers, free money, to help you get some technical expertise from a college. And the Innovation Vouchers website links you to the Knowledge Transfer Ireland site, which will connect you in turn to the particular expertise that you need. So it's a question of getting in there, guys, and trawling around and see what's available in these things. But those particular items should be of interest to you. I mentioned about R&D, and I do hope that more and more of your companies do get into R&D. It's certainly a value-added way of moving forward. The Agile Innovation Fund is run out of Enterprise Ireland, but Leo companies are eligible for it, and you'll find links on the Leo sites. Excuse me. It supports R&D for product and process development, and it covers expenditures up to 300k, the project value of 300k, with grant rates from 25% up to 50%. So you could get up to 150k on a 300k project. Now, interestingly, it includes an expression of interest facility, which is where you can set out your project briefly in terms of this is what it does. It's a template which you complete and send in to the Enterprise Ireland R&D unit. And they review it and come back to you and give you feedback in terms of, is this a likely full Agile innovation project, and what might you need to do to improve it, to make it eligible. So it's ideal. Agile innovation is an ideal scheme for companies who are new to R&D or have one or more short projects. I was dealing with a packaging company there last year who developed a really elegant solution for packaging medical and fragile projects on a piece of cardboard covered with a piece of cellophane. It sounds dead easy, but they put a lot of work into that. They didn't actually apply for R&D funding, but on reflection, it was such a, as I say, an elegant piece of innovation. On reflection, they should really have put it in for an R&D project. The other thing that does is it forms a bit of discipline around your project. So you have to set out what it is you're going to do and how you're going to do it. So it helps to keep your project on track. That's R&D. Okay, a few thoughts or observations on sales and marketing. The object of any business is to generate sales. And for it to be viable, it basically needs to generate sufficient sales to pay your business costs, your own salary, and your taxes. You've got to cover all that stuff, otherwise you're not in business. So what sales do you need to generate per day to cover those costs? Because everything beyond that is profit, which can contribute to your rainy day fund, i.e. your reserves. So starting from what I've shown you there on the slide, your situation is maybe no sales or low sales, or you need to increase your sales. The objectives, how many sales per day are needed? What do you need to generate per day, maybe per week, to meet your objectives? But once you have those objectives, sales per day or sales per week, the rest of it is about generating those sales. The strategy, the tactics, the action, the management. So you address those issues and then take a subset and target them. Don't take the whole lot. Take a subset. Target, maybe of 10 companies. Target them with your marketing approach and measure the result. And then take the next 10 and learn from it as you go. How has your marketing approach worked? I'm moving on now to sales and marketing to share some information of knowledge that I've picked up over the years. This particular slide is drawn from a book called All the Mistakes by Peter Cronin of Urdu, and he has a model called SOSTAM, SOSTAM. So the objective of any business is to generate sales, and for it to be viable, it basically needs to generate sufficient sales to pay your business costs, your own salary, and your taxes. So what sales do you need to generate per day, or maybe per week, to cover those costs? Because everything beyond that is profit, which contribute to your rainy day fund, i.e. your reserves. So once you have the objectives, sales per day or sales per week, the rest of it is about generating those sales, the strategy, the physical list of target customers, the tactics, how you're going to target those different groups, the action, who, what, where, when. And the idea is to take once you've decided what to do, take a subset of companies or clients or potential clients and target them and measure the result. Target them with whatever marketing techniques you've come up with and measure the result. Simple as that. Do it for the next group, maybe another 10 companies, and see what changes you can make to your marketing techniques. The next slide will give you a suggested pipeline technique to turn opportunities into sales. And this particular model is taken from Rules of the Road for the Sales Team by Michael McGowan. This has been out for some time, but it's really useful. Little small booklet. Now all of this might sound very simplistic, and both slides are dealt with in far more detail in the books that they're drawn from, but it shows the importance of using a system to instill discipline into the sales process. And the discipline in sales pipeline management is that you're starting off with, say, 12 opportunities. Initial bit of engagement, maybe getting an appointment out of them. Maybe you only get 9 out of the 12 appointments. Begin to gather a bit of information, and you might regard 6 of those as being prospects, potential prospects. Stage 4 is a couple of those might turn out to have a reasonable level of potential, say 50% potential of turning them into sales. One of them, you might get a verbal contract, and finally you close it with one of those, with that customer. So it looks very basic, and it is very basic. There's a lot more in the book, but think about getting that bit of discipline into your sales process. So I'm just going to move on then to Brexit. I've got a bit to say about this, so you'll have to just think about this for a minute. There's a bit on this slide. Basically, there's 10 steps. In fact, it's 8, and then 2 other kind of, I would suppose you'd call them qualitative steps. But you begin by registering with revenue for your EORI number. I think at this stage, most of you will have an EORI number. That's Economic Operator Registration Identifier. In terms of duties, decide how you're going to pay your customs duties. You may need to apply to the revenue commissioners for a customs deferred payments authorization, which will require a comprehensive guarantee from your bank. You'd also need a trader account number from revenue, for which you have to be certified as an authorized economic operator. These things look complex when you start getting into them, but once you get your head into them, it begins to make a lot of sense. That's your duties bit. You've got your classification of goods using tariff codes. They'll be available on the revenue. So what categories do they fit into to codify your products for duty liability? Decide then who's going to lodge your customs declarations. Is it you or your agent? This brings into account the single administrative document, the SAD, which, as I say, is prepared by a customs agent or by the company. If it's low volume, you're probably better off using an agent. If you're higher volume, think about using it yourself in-house, but you'll need special software for that. Again, revenue.ie website gives you everything you need to know on that. The next one is about responsibility. The responsibility for lodging and for handling all the documents and for making the returns. It's either you, your supplier, or your customer. And you need to agree the Incoterms. The Incoterms are the terms which cover the actual contract you have with the supplier or the customer. Like, you know, free at point of arrival, or CPT to the door of your factory. These will form part of your contract with your supplier or customer in the UK and in other third countries. If you've got agricultural goods, you need to register with the Department of Agriculture, and also on their traces/NT system for veterinary certification. So the salmon importer I was telling you about, he needed to register his products and his imports on the traces/NT system. VAT, there's always VAT. VAT must usually be paid at the point of import, but if you're an approved economic operator, I mentioned that earlier, the AEO, you can have a deferred payment account, similar to what you do on the duties front. You also need to apply for a UK VAT number. That takes a little while, so you need to apply for it as soon as possible. Finally, you need to check the rules of origin for different tariff rates, because the origin really depends on the scope of the EU trade deal. If we get a full bells and whistles trade deal, then we hopefully will have minimal tariffs. But if we don't, if we're on World Trade Organization tariffs, then we're in trouble. But some countries have a preferential deal with the EU on tariffs, trade deals with the EU. So it may reduce the tariffs applicable to your imports. And then the last 2 points I mentioned, these are qualitative points. Talk with your customers and suppliers and know the procedures at ports. Make sure you discussed all this with your customers and suppliers. And lastly, train your staff. Train your staff. Look at the SkillNet's project program on Clear Customs. Clear Customs is what it's called. It's an online program on customs. A lot of companies are signing up with that. The LEOs run similar programs on managing customs. And lastly, I'm just going to touch base on various important sites. There's a whole range of supports and organizations to help you on your journey. Obviously, there's the Fingal Leo one, Intertrade Ireland, Enterprise Ireland Innovation Vouchers. One there, the EI Market Research Centre. Go into that link and have a look. The Enterprise Ireland Market Research Centre, the documents and the reports on that are available to anyone. You don't have to be a client of Enterprise Ireland, but there's loads of information about how do you export to Germany, how do you get suppliers or customers in the US, how do you export to the Far East. That's all available free of charge on EI's Market Research Centre. Supports for SMEs, it's a government website. It gives on gov.ie, but it's a tool which you complete the tool with your details and needs, and it comes back to you and suggests where you might go, points you. It's a signposting tool, I suppose, what you'd call it. Knowledge Transfer Ireland, told you about that, for everything in the third level sector. Bear in mind how useful the third level sector can be, and the amount of expertise that resides in the third level sector. Agile Innovation Fund, for those of you who are planning on getting into a bit of R&D. And finally, Prepare for Brexit. It's run by Enterprise Ireland, but there's an absolute wealth of information on their site, particularly their insights section of that site. Of them all, one of the most immediate is probably the mentoring service from Fingal Leo, because it always helps to get an outside view on your business. And note that a mentor usually has various contacts, quite apart from what he's doing with Fingal, but from his background, his or her background. They'll usually have various contacts and networks that could be of assistance, quite apart from direct supports from the Leo. For instance, one of the companies I was dealing with the other day on Brexit asked me, did I know of anyone who would have temperatures available of under 20 degrees C. He had a product which needed to be stored at minus 20 degrees C. So there was a chap I was dealing with previously, a refrigeration company, and I put him in touch with him. Now I'm not sure whether they were able to do a deal, but it's probably a good starting point. So the mentors tend to have a lot of experience from their background and from clients they've already dealt with. So good luck with that. The very best of luck on your journey, and thank you for tuning in.